Okay, this is the universal Unicon button mapping theory. For this demonstration, we will be using my personal gaming setup, which is a Unicon U4 and a Razer Viper V3. This theory should apply across all games in all genres, as it is the theory behind how you should think about how to map your Unicon. First, let's cover the movement, as it's the one feature that you cannot remap. It's built into the design of the Unicon itself. Forward, backward, left, right, and all diagonals are controlled by slightly moving or shifting the Unicon in the direction you want to move in-game. Now let's look at the rest of the buttons. First, make sure we understand what they all do. The 8 top face buttons and the 4 right sidewall buttons are all for discrete in-game actions like jump or reload. The left 2 sidewall buttons are your mode or layer buttons. When held down, these give the user additional layers that can be used to map multiple inputs to the same physical button. So if layer 1 is the base layer with neither mode button held down, layer 2 is activated when one of the mode buttons is held down, layer 3 is activated when the other mode button is held down, and layer 4, which you'll never need, is activated when both mode buttons are held down. So with just 14 buttons, we can make a total of 48 unique inputs, 12 by 4. And I know that sounds complicated and overwhelming, but I promise it's not. I will tell you exactly why. Which leads us into the next part of the mapping theory, which is in 2 parts. 1, action priority, and 2, action grouping. By priority, I mean depending on the game you're playing, what actions do you perform more often and what in-game actions do you perform less often. For example, in a shooter game, you probably crouch or reload more than you would check the scoreboard or your inventory. That idea is built into the design of the Unicon. So when thinking about priority, you want to map your buttons from higher priority to lower priority, going from right to left across the controller in general. Starting with the 4 buttons on the right side wall, these should always be mapped for movement. Starting with the lowest button, that's going to be mapped for crouching, going prone, laying down. It's the lowest button on the Unicon. It makes sense. Your character gets lower to the ground in the game. I don't know. It makes sense to me. Now here would be the button for activating sprint or your stow weapons button, and the next button here would be jump or your special movement. If you're playing a game where you need to press jump and crouch at the same time, I recommend mapping jump to one of the sidewall buttons on your mouse. I personally use mouse button 5 on all games I play. That still stays within the framework that I'm using, which is that I'm only ever going to use my thumbs to perform movement actions on whatever game I'm playing. Keeping things logically grouped together is the idea here. If you're playing a game like Highguard or Arc Raiders that has a special movement action like dodge, roll, or mount, I would map them here. And again, jump was on mouse button 5. And then lastly, I assign melee, usually I put here. And then to finish off all thumb buttons, I usually map interact to mouse button 4. So on the mouse I have jump and interact to those 2 sidewall buttons. Now that we have all of our in-game movement mapped, we can successfully move around, sprint, jump, crouch, aim, shoot, slide, pick stuff up, all of that. Before we cover how to actually map the top face buttons, I want to cover the different layers and how they relate to the second part of the mapping theory, which was action grouping. In most games you play, there are usually 2 or 3 unique inputs that you could logically group together. For example, maybe both tactical and lethal equipment items like a stun grenade and frag grenade in Call of Duty. They're both equipment items. If you have a tactical and an ultimate ability, they're both abilities. What I'm getting at is that you can logically see how a player could take 2 or 3 inputs and put them together in a group and then map that group of inputs to a single button using the different layers on the Unicon. So in terms of priority, I want my most used buttons mapped furthest to the right. So this is my actual button layout, which would apply across multiple games. Cycle weapon, reload, heal or quick use, and ability. So those are my most commonly used inputs behind moving, looting, and shooting. This group of inputs I can quickly and easily hit with my index finger. The next group of 4 buttons would be used for actions I still want to be able to hit quickly, but maybe not use as often. So here would be equipment like a grenade. Here is an extra utility, like if you're playing Arc Raiders, maybe your flashlight. Here's inventory, and here's something that you would rarely use, as it's probably the most difficult button to hit. If there is a most difficult one, it would be that. Ping, push to talk, something you don't use very often. Now getting into the grouping using the layers. The idea that we talked about earlier, where we'd take 2 or 3 inputs and group them into one button, is applied here using the layer keys. So looking at our setup again, we have cycle weapon here. If you're playing a game like Arc Raiders, Fortnite, Call of Duty, where you have a dedicated input to equip a melee weapon or a pickaxe, I would group that to the same button as cycle weapon. For reload weapon, again, on layer 2, I would map this to select firing mode like full or semi-automatic. For healing, right here, like I just said, maybe your team heal or survival item. And then if tactical ability is on layer 1, maybe your ultimate ability is set to layer 2. On the second 4 group, here's where it gets a little bit more flexible, but there are some key things that I always use. Escape on layer 2 and 3, I always have mapped to the top left button. It's in the top left hand corner on a keyboard. I just put it there. It just makes, I always know where escape is on every single game. Of course, I map it to the same place. If your equipment was right here, right, like your lethal or tactical equipment, like a grenade or stun grenade, then whichever one you didn't map to layer 1, I would map to layer 2. And then the other 2, any other in-game utilities that maybe you hadn't accounted for. Now, to use layer 3 I use for basically all menu stuff. So layer 2 would be like extra in-game actions that I couldn't fit in the 12 inputs on layer 1. Layer 3, in my mind, I always know that is just for things like checking the menu, checking the map, scoreboard, all that kind of stuff. And you can map it to wherever makes logical sense to you. Layer 3 also in a game like Call of Duty is where I would map kill streaks 1, 2, and 3. But that's the general idea behind button mapping, ordering by priority and then grouping. Let me know if you guys have any questions. You could leave a comment on the video, email me, join the Discord. I will do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible. I also will be releasing dedicated remapping videos game by game for just whatever games you guys would request. So if there's a game you want a remapping video done for, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you.